Hello, I'm Doug and this is the Taste and Sensibility channel. And today we're at episode number 1 of Mild Melty Cheeses. And that is my name for a chapter in this book, The Book of Cheese by Liz Thorpe, whom I've met and got to sign it. And she has taught me a lot through this book and in the tasting that she put on. But this is the 3rd chapter in this book, which she calls the Havarti Gateway. She really wanted to call it the Gouda Gateway, but Gouda is confusing because there's an aged version widely available to everyone, and there's a young version widely available to everyone. So generally, the whole group of milder flavored cheeses are not strong or intense in their flavors, but they melt well. So I just called it mild and melty. And she had trouble putting a name to it. So I've got some Gouda here. Here's one that's domestic, U.S. from Wisconsin. And then I've got a couple from Holland, the Netherlands. They're Dutch. And then I've got one from Belgium that I bought in a cheese shop. And then since we're talking about melty, I made a grilled cheese sandwich with this domestic one. And I'll taste that a little later after it stops running around in between the bread slices. So if you like the videos that you've been seeing here on this channel, give this one a thumbs up. Leave comments down below, leave questions, leave your experiences with Gouda, and share it with people. And subscribe to the channel and click that bell to get notified when the new videos come out. I try to do it on Mondays, and that's all I'll say. So Liz acknowledges that these are a little milder in flavor than a lot of people like nowadays. But she emphasizes they're daily table cheeses. You could eat them with every meal. So in today's foodie culture, Havarti, red wax Gouda, and the like are written off as commodity cheeses, or at the very least as boring and pedestrian. But to me, Havarti is a gateway to everyday eating cheese. In our house, that means cheeses that are reliably tasty, not terribly expensive, and most important, hold the promise of lavish melting, softening into cheese rivers with only the slightest encouragement of toaster oven or microwave. These are what the world turned to before processed cheese products came along. They do the same thing without added emulsifiers, whey, coloring, or other junk. They're also an approachable introduction to French tomes and Italian tomas, which in their countries and regions of origin are considered table cheeses intended for everyday eating and melting. The continental cousins have more earth and rusticity to them, but their purpose is the same: casual, multi-generational noshing. Havarti is made in Denmark, the Dutch have Gouda, the Italians have Fontina in the northwest, and Asiago in the northeast. What I love about this group of cheeses is the very concept of a table cheese. For cheese to be part of every meal, one must believe that cheese is an everyday food. It's not a special occasion food or an elite food. Quite the opposite. Eating it is no big deal. Across much of the states, we share a vision of this possibility, but too often only for the junkiest of cheeses, the processed ones. The slices individually wrapped in plastic. So she wants to replace those wrapped slices with the cheeses in this series. So I'm just going to pick one that I already sliced open. The rest of this is in the grilled cheese sandwich. I'll get a couple pieces of this domestic Gouda made in Wisconsin from Castello. And just give you an idea of the flavor. Creamy, very slight little tang to it, or zippiness. It's mild, a little buttery tasting. And the salt perks it up quite a bit. So you can tell it's salted, but it's not screaming salt. Put it on a multi-grain cracker, and it is everything a cheese ought to do on a cracker. It's the more interesting partner. It's not as salty as the cracker is, and just a good flavor. Now I'm going to dump out one of the Dutch cheeses, which I just cut off a chunk and just left it in the wax and the wrapper and everything, to help me remember that this is the Van Kaas. I'll put pictures of all these labels up here. So these are just things I found in grocery stores or good cheese departments. There's a wine and cheese shop, then Whole Foods usually has pretty good cheese selection. So there, I will taste it plain and then put it on some cracker. There's a little bit of red wax here, and then there's a little bit of a cloth rind or some barrier. So make sure that came off. But this one is wetter, stickier, pastier in the mouth. The other one's more like a real soft cheddar. The texturally, it's different. And taste-wise, it's different too. I want to taste it again plain. The tanginess I found in the Castello is a little sharper, a little louder. It's not quite as creamy or fat tasting or lush as the Castello was. So it's just, and those are very slight differences. And these have all been at room temperature for a while, so they're not cold. And I'm getting almost all the flavors I should be. So they're very similar. I get a little more of the tanginess, tartness, maybe lactic acid in the Van Kaas. And now I'll just move over to the other one, Dutch Garden. It's got a little rind thing on one end that I can get off. And it's got one on the other that's not so colorful. So you gotta, or maybe it's just the texture of the thing that's already gone. That's falling apart. Dutch Garden. Ooh. Even stickier, even wetter. Same tang level as this thing. There's something slightly sharp. And there's a different flavor that's reminding me of some very mild baking spice. Something more interesting in the enzyme mixture recipe process that just has it's a non-dairy flavor that's hard to describe, and I don't pick it up in these two. So flatbread, the Dutch Garden Gouda. Very wet, wetter than either of these two, but it's still a little creamy, a little mouth coating from the fat, a little buttery tasting. This may have the least salt of the ones I've tasted. It's just cheerful and bright and dairy notes. So I'm liking all these things. Now let me get this Belgian one called Farmdal that I got at a wine and liquor store. It has a good cheese department and a deli. So, Farmdal, well, let's eat it plain first. It's smeary and wet, but it's got a richer mouthfeel. It's more lush. The fat just rolls over your tongue and anything that can feel texture. Rich, lush. Okay, go. And there's a aging note to it that I might pick up in Swiss type cheeses. Huh, that's different. It's not in the others here. Got it with the cracker too. So that's interesting. I've tasted that in other cheeses, and I'm thinking it's probably goes along with Swiss, or can't remember. But it's a note that's not the spice note from this. It's not in these two. Interesting, good. So they're all very slightly different. But now I'm going to try a little pairing of maybe my favorite with the Farmdal. With the dried cranberries on this multi-grain cracker. So, good flavors, but the texture contrast between the cheese and the dried cranberries is very low. So it would have been more interesting if it was a little snappier or a different texture than the cheese was. And let's see. I'll do something with pistachios. That will be a different texture. So they're pretty mild and subtle. Here goes. Oh, that's interesting. It'd be hard to guess what that was, or sort it out, or tell anyone that that's Gouda and a pistachio. Okay, I like that. Okay, I got one that really worked, and now I'll quit. Now, I'm going to clear off the fresh cheese and cut open my sandwich I made a few minutes ago. I know there's bacon bits over here on this side, which creates another pairing. So let's see, one little bacon encroachment came over. Okay, he's gone. Everyone's on their own side now. So this is a very plain white grocery store bread with thinly sliced Gouda on either side. So I'll let it melt and put the two things together. Flavor is very mild, and it doesn't have quite the smoothness of a processed cheese, like American Kraft American singles or some similar thing. You can tell there's a little bit of separation of the oil maybe from the other cheese components, which I always flags me as a little textural thing that I don't care for much. But maybe that's a bias I can get rid of in this series. So I think I'll be doing this quite a bit. So, good flavor combination, toasty bread, browned in a skillet with butter on the outside. Just goes with this cheese very well. Now I'll try it with the bacon in this half. There's not much bacon, but it's the loudest food in here. Louder than the cheese, louder than the bread, louder than the butter. So that works. That is a good sandwich. So, here I am with no napkin again. I've got to learn to prepare better. So as I said before, please like this video. Give it that thumbs up. Leave questions and comments, and share it with friends. Subscribe and click that bell. And this is just the beginning of, I don't know, 15, 20 or more cheeses in this episodes on these milder, melty cheeses. Not many are at the intense end of the flavor spectrum, but some will get over there. And they're probably European. So come back for the next one, and cheers.